Mars ingresses into Virgo on June 17th and will remain there until August 6th. This is a very important transit, not only because Mars is a slower moving planet, but also because Mars will be conjoined the south node of the moon the entire time it moves through Virgo. That's where the south node is, also called Ketu. And interestingly enough, Ketu, or the south node of the moon, gives the effects of Mars naturally. All right, this is in Parashara. Ketu gives the effects of Mars, in addition to the ruler of the sign in which Ketu is. Okay, so Ketu naturally gives the effects of Mars, and then Mars will be conjoining Ketu. So there's a lot of martial activity happening in Virgo right now, or after June 17th. So I'm going to explain a couple of things that just happened that were actually influenced by Mars's aspect onto Rahu, all right, or the north node of the moon, and then how when Mars moves into Ketu sign of Virgo, where Ketu currently is, how that will play out on the world stage. Okay, so yesterday you had, there's been some ongoing civil unrest or riots. There was a plane crash in India, and there was bombings happening in Tehran, Iran. That's going to be a very escalating conflict. Well, I talked about this in one of the videos. It was either the June video or it could have been the new moon video. I can't remember exactly. Well, one of those videos, I was talking about something called Saturn Zil, which is the square of Jupiter and Saturn to each other when Jupiter is 90 degrees ahead of Saturn. So it happens 4 to 5 years after the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, which is also important. But this Saturn Zil causes things to happen in 60-year cycles, and the effects of this last for a very long time, basically a generation, 20 years or so. And with the addition of the Mars planetary aspect onto the north node of the moon, Rahu, that's what causes explosions. Rahu rules explosions. Rahu rules chaos and things like that, using tear gas and bombs. All of that is within the realm of Rahu, and Mars can activate that, and Mars did that through its 8th house aspect. In Vedic astrology, you have something called the planetary aspects that are not mutual. In Western astrology, all of the aspects to each other are mutual. You have the square aspect, trines, sextiles, they all are mutual aspects, but in Vedic astrology, Mars will aspect the 8th from himself. That is a planetary aspect specific to Mars. Mars aspects the 4th and the 8th from himself. The 8th because we fight. Mars is what we fight for. We fight for our life, our longevity. That's the 8th house. We fight for our home, our land. That's the 4th house. Okay, that's the kind of logic behind it. So Mars was aspecting Rahu, and it still is right now, with full aspect, with 100% aspect. Mars will aspect from the 7th point from himself to the 8th point from himself with full 100% aspect. So that is why you see kind of an eruption in chaotic violence, explosions, and falling. Rahu rules falling. So when you fall, that's ruled by Rahu. The sign that rules falling is Sagittarius. Okay, so both of those things rule falling. All right, so when Mars moves into Virgo and conjoins Ketu, the violence will be controlled more. It won't erupt. It will still erupt. You're still going to have explosions. You can still have, chemicals used because Rahu rules those as well. You're going to still have those things, but the violence will be much more controlled and inhibited, and in some cases clandestine and secretive. Because that's what Ketu does. Ketu is the planet of wanting things in absolutes. Ketu wants things to be perfect. Okay, Ketu wants perfection. Ketu is very critical and scrutinizing, and Ketu wants to control things. It's a highly controlling planet. Ketu gives the effects of Mars in a lot of ways. Mars happens to be the general in the planetary army, which controls the troops. So that makes sense. So there's still going to be violence, but there's going to be a control of violence, and it has to be used in ways with the primary goal as the most amount of effectiveness. Also, Mars is logic, and Mars is the planet we get out to use when we have problems. We have to solve a problem with logic. That's how we solve a problem. But every problem has something new about it, something new that we have to use our instincts with. We can't plan for everything. And so that is the unknown factor. And that's why sometimes a Ketu Mars can get frustrated and erupt in violence or want to break the problem rather than solve the problem, because there is that acting on instinct that is the right instinct that Mars also rules. When you're fighting, when you're doing martial arts, a lot of that is acting on instinct. That's where the Ketu Mars can have some problems. But in general, this conjunction is easily handled. If you have Mars Ketu conjunction in your chart, you usually don't like to use violence. You usually can solve problems with logic very effectively and don't get frustrated. But there are those times when you're not sure what will pop up, what new will pop up with whatever problem you have. And so you're not sure that you will use your instincts correctly. And that's where you can get frustrated and want to break the problem. So Ketu Mars people, Ketu Mars, when they are conjoined, are not known for violence, but they can erupt in that sometimes. All right. Now, the aspect of Mars onto Rahu with an oppositional aspect is still going to cause some eruptions in violence, but not like what we've seen for the past couple of weeks. There will be problems solved in a level-headed way between June 17th and August 6th with some other eruptions and violence. Let's see if I've covered everything I wanted to cover collectively. Mars works with logic and also an instinctual response, and that's why you have martial arts, which is can be instinctual. And that Mars Ketu can't plan for everything. So sometimes there can be an eruption of frustration or an eruption of attack. But usually this means that the violence is much more controlled and even hidden in a way. Now, Ketu rules the color black. Ketu happens to hide things. Ketu hides things more effectively and better than Rahu does. Rahu hides things. It's like you're walking up to something and it appears to be something, and as you get closer and closer, you realize it's something else. That's Rahu. With Ketu, it's hidden. Ketu is like a black hole. So it can be very secretive. So Mars in Virgo. Mars doesn't do well. It does not do well in signs of Mercury, Gemini, or Virgo. The reason being Mercury is an enemy to Mars, and Mars is a neutral towards Mercury. And the reason Mercury is an enemy to Mars is because Mercury is the planet we use to investigate something, try it out, see if it works. If it doesn't work for us, we discard it, okay? Mercury is the investigating planet. Mars is the planet we use to solve problems, and usually that is something big. It's also a problem if we want to get somewhere in life, if we want to move forward with our career, if we want to move to a different country, if we want to become wealthy, whatever it is, okay? That is actually a problem that has to be overcome. There's going to be obstacles in the way of those things. And that's why Mars does so well in the 10th house, which is the house of career. But what I'm getting at is that Mars does big things. Mars is our willpower, sheer will. You do something out of sheer will. You can see that your will is going to make a difference. So when Mars is in the signs of Mercury, the person doesn't do the big things they need to do, because Mercury is going to say that's too big. It's, it's not going to work out. It's not worth it, and just discards it. Okay. So there's a bit of a clash going on there. And also Mars being in Virgo, Virgo is the sign of the young prepubescent girl. And so it's the sign of children. It can show, violence against children, especially with Ketu there. It also shows getting involved in things that are not our business. You'll see this if you have a Mars-Mercury conjunction, because the Mercury, or having Mars and Mercury signs, Mars and Virgo, Mercury will inhibit Mars's will to tackle the big things. So there's a lot of frustration in the person or in the collective. Okay. And so the person or the collective, just the general energy is getting involved in things that are not going to make our life better, to tackle the big things in our life, so we get involved in other people's lives, in other people's business, and in things that really aren't supposed to be a part of our life. Trying to solve their problems, solve all the problems except our own, because we don't believe that our will make a difference. You just apply this to the collective level. So, a lot of gossip, a lot of nosy neighbor type of situations. Because it's funny, because Mars is the planet. Mars actually rules neighbors and co-workers and even siblings. So getting involved in your sibling's business or your neighbor's business. And that is indicative of Mars being influenced by Mercury, whether being in a sign of Mercury, conjoined Mercury. Now, Virgo, of course, is the prepubescent girl, like I said, that can show that can be something wrong with children during this transit of Mars. It can also mean that Virgo actually rules the lumbar region of the spine, the lower back. And this is the part that people have so much problems with. Okay, they have a lot of problems with their lower back. Everybody complains about their lower back. Well, not everybody, but a significant proportion of the population complains about their lower back. And Virgo is the sign of the harvest in the Northern Hemisphere. It's when all the food was harvested, when we had to do the most work back in the old days. Okay, that was the time where you had to work and bring in that harvest, or you would starve. And that is, of course, back-breaking work. So on a collective level, this means too much work to do, or that the work causes health issues, especially in the lower back area. Virgo is also a sign of laws and following rules, following steps. It's very much kind of like a do-it-yourself manual, getting out the diagram and following all the steps to build something. That's Virgo. Virgo is also man-made laws. Gemini, which is the other sign of Mercury, is more social laws, social etiquette, okay? Dealing with people socially. And because Mars, of course, is also Gemini is an air sign. But Mars in Virgo, which is a sign of laws. Now, Mars, of course, breaks things. So breaking laws. So usually there's more law breaking as Mars moves through the sign of Virgo. All right. Because Mercury is very much a planet of following a set step, a way of doing things. It rules initiatory instructions, when you are in elementary school, middle school, when you're learning your math and your reading and all of that kind of thing. That's Mercury. And Mars is more about doing big things and solving problems in a big way, so you can move ahead of everybody else. Of course, Mars is competition. So that's why Mars can be a little problematic in Virgo, especially around the health issues. So you can just keep that in mind as Mars transits through Virgo. Now I want to go into each ascendant. So you have Aries ascendant, and this is Ketu Mars conjunction in your 6th house of Virgo. And so this can mean surgery in a lot of people. Or it can mean you burn something off, you know, like skin cancer or something like that, or have a mole cut off. It can mean you get rid of some sickness through fever or through a way that happens very quickly. Okay, it's usually a good conjunction to have in the sixth house because the sixth house likes malefic energy. And especially if you're someone who has debt, you are really focused on paying off your debt and want to take care of that problem right away. It's also really good if you are in a battle with someone, if you're in a lawsuit with someone. During this time from June 17th to August 6th, you can overcome them in a battle or a lawsuit. All right, that Mars energy works really well in the sixth house. And also just getting work done. If there's a problem you need to tackle, you need to do something that's really important very quickly in the realm of your work life, you'll be able to do that pretty quickly and pretty efficiently. Okay, so for a Taurus rising, Mars will be in your fifth house, conjoined Ketu right now. So Mars is a planet of passion, and the fifth house happens to be a relationship house or a house of romance. So there's a lot of passion for romance as Mars transits through your fifth house from June 17th to August 6th. And Mars is a planet of pursuing something that you really hunger for because of the passion, because of the fire. Mars is also the fire element. Wherever the fire element is, makes us hungry. So we're hungry for romance for a Taurus rising. The fifth house is also children and creativity. And when Mars is there, you can pursue a creative vision very strongly, and you use your will to pursue this vision and to implement it into your life and to make it materialize for you. And you strategize around how you want to implement your creative vision into the world and also into any investments that you may be interested in, because the fifth house is also investments. This can cause some clashes with your children, or your children or are more willful than usual. Depending on how your Mars is in your natal chart, there can be clashes with children, frustrations with children. But if you use logic to solve the problems in the relationships with your children, things should go smoothly. And so just be aware of that. You have both Mars and Ketu in your fifth house during this transit. So there's a lot of focus on that house, focus on romance, focus on children and the relationship with them, focus on your creative projects, on your investments. Another thing that is important for the fifth house is spiritual techniques. So any techniques that you do to experience the source or the divine in nature or magic or non-ordinary reality or different states of consciousness, all the techniques that you use for that is the fifth house. So you're going to have a passion for those things. You're going to strategize with them, and they become an important part of your life. All right. There can be a little bit of problems around those things, or, some obstacles to overcome, just because Mars is what they call a functional malefic for a Taurus rising. It rules the 12th and the 7th house. And those are malefic, quote unquote, houses. The rulership of those houses can cause some issues, but if you remember to use the right side of Mars, the logically solving problems in a calm and efficient way, and to trust your instincts around these things. Mars is a very instinctual planet. And to strategize and to learn. If your strategy isn't working, it's time to employ a new one, or go to plan B, plan C. That's really important with Mars. If you're beating your head against the wall trying to make something work in the realm of the fifth house and it's not working, it's time to change your strategy. All right, that's how a healthy Mars operates. Okay, so for a Gemini rising, Mars moves into your fourth house on June 17th and remains there until August 6th. Now, when this happens, it usually means something breaks in the home that you need to repair. And Mars is the planet of making repairs, of fixing problems. It also rules real estate. So your residence, the actual building of your home, is represented. It's a big part of your life during this time. And it can mean something breaks in your house. It can mean there's problems with the electricity in your house, which is ruled by Mars. It can also mean you gain from real estate in some way, because for a Gemini rising, Mars rules the 11th house, and the 11th house is the house of gains. Okay, I'm using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac. So Mars rulership of that 11th house will provide gain in some way, but also the rulership of the 6th, which Mars rules your 6th house of Scorpio going to your 4th, that's going to cause delays and some problems that you really need to pay attention to. It can also mean that you need to fix something on your vehicles, one of your vehicles as well. Now, on an inner level, this can be a little challenging. It can cause some friction with your mother or in the relationship with your mother, and it can cause some minor frustrations that you don't really know how to deal with. Okay, some inner anger, especially around the past for a Gemini rising, because Mars, when it's in the 5th or 4th house, which it is, that's its position where it gets the least amount of directional strength, and it gets kind of weak. Mars gets a little weak in the 4th house, and because Mars uses logic, and the 4th house is a house of feelings and emotions and emotional reactions and our memories of the past, which are and our reactions to those things and how we feel about it. And Mars is designed to be more in the 10th house, which is the opposite sign, looking out over everything and seeing what it needs to do. When it's in the 4th house, it's kind of overwhelmed with emotion. So just be wary of that. Remember that about yourself, that you're just having maybe a little bit of frustration around the past or with your mom. So whatever it is on that inner level, you can work through it, probably not by employing logic or trying to work it out logically. Okay, and those feelings just need to be calm and let go of, because remember, Ketu is there too. Ketu is in the 4th house for a Gemini rising, and those are the resolution of a lot of karmas from the past. That's what happens when Ketu moves through a house. It resolves a lot of karmas. It doesn't mean things are over. It just means some things come to an end because they are resolved, because you found a resolution to those things. So that can happen if you are having friction in your relationships with your mother or in your relationship to your past in general. Okay, so for a Cancer rising, Mars moves into your 3rd house of Virgo. I'm using whole sign houses in the tropical zodiac. And that will be on June 17th and remain there until August 6th. This is actually a pretty good transit. This is a good transit for Mars. The 3rd house likes malefic energy, especially martial malefic energy, because the 3rd house rules courage, self-promotion, self-assertion. It rules employing your will to get somewhere, a mild competition. And Mars rules all of those things as well. So when Mars goes into that 3rd house, you usually have a lot of courage to pursue and implement your will and to assert yourself, okay? And to compete when it is necessary, to fight for what you want, to fight for your short-term desires. The 3rd house is the short-term desire house. It's where I want this, so I'm going to put a lot of my energy into it, a lot of my passion into this, what I want, and I will get my reward. I will get what I want if I apply myself, if I assert myself, if I have the courage to pursue my desire. That is Mars in the 3rd house. So you're really going to feel that as Mars transits through Virgo. Your siblings will come more into your life. You'll develop more of a relationship with your siblings. You may be a little bit critical of your siblings. You may want to help your siblings get rid of something that is causing them harm. And you can enter competitions. You may be more interested in exercising or doing some type of fitness regimen. And you may feel very creative in an artistic way, or either art, music, or other type of performing arts like acting. Because Mars is a really important planet for a Cancer rising. It's your Raj Yog Karaka. All right, it rules the 5th and the 10th house. And that it's a trine and an angle, so that makes Mars a good planet or a functional benefic for a Cancer rising. So going through the 3rd house, it should give you a lot of luck with 3rd house things. Also enjoying yourself, playing games, enjoying types of entertainment, just going out and really socializing with people. But also this is something like if you're in the realm of marketing or public relations, this is also a really good time to get out there and be present, be seen. All right, so a good time for the Cancer rising, this Mars transit through Virgo. All right, so for a Leo rising, Mars moves into your 2nd house of Virgo on June 17th and remains there until August 6th. I'm using whole sign houses in the tropical zodiac. So Mars is moving from your 1st, you started a new cycle with Mars, and now Mars will move into your 2nd house. And the 2nd house is really what is part of us, what is part of our environment. And it's an extension of us. It's an extension of who we are, and it rules our family, it rules our name, it rules all of our possessions, everything we own, and our responsibilities. And so it rules the means to take care of our responsibilities. That's why it rules wealth. So when Mars goes into this house, and it will be conjoined Ketu there's a lot of focus on that house, especially for a Leo, because Mars is the Raj Yog Karaka for a Leo rising, meaning it's the king-making planet. It's a functional benefic. It rules an angle and a trine, the 4th and the 9th, okay? So there's a lot of luck around increasing your financial prosperity or material prosperity. You can you really have a passion and an enthusiasm to organize your life and your finances in a way that's more efficient, where you can benefit more from what you already own. All right. There may be something like you need to fix your possessions or repair your possessions. This can be a little difficult for family life. You can get into some arguments with family members, especially family from your childhood, okay, your childhood family. And you can also have maybe some disagreements with your very close friends that you consider to be family. But it all works out in the end because Mars is a good planet for a Leo rising. But there is a big focus on that family life, on your material life, on managing your resources, increasing your resources, being more efficient with those things, all right? And also increasing your self-worth and how you value yourself. That's very important. The 2nd house is our self-worth. The 1st is our self-esteem. They're different, okay? When Mars moves into your 2nd house, you have a hunger to build up your self-worth, make yourself more valuable, be able to use your resources in a way that brings more into your life, more of the good things in life, okay? Because Mars, again, is that Raj Yog Karaka, that king-making planet. So a pretty good transit for a Leo rising. All right, so for Virgo risings, Mars moving into your 1st house on June 17th. So this is kind of a big deal. Anytime you have planets moving through the 1st house, that resets that planet in a way. It resets the relationship that you have with that planet and how you use the indications of that planet to follow your path in life. Because the 1st house is you, your characteristics, your general personality. It's your comfort and pain. It's also the path you walk in life, okay? So any planets there natally are going to be really important. But as planets transit through your first house, you're resetting a cycle with that planet and how you use it. So Mars going through your first house will reset how you implement your will, how you strategize what you want to go for in life, how you fix problems, how you tackle the problems and strategize for the problems. Also, Mars has to do with self-improvement. Any type of self-improvement, that is the feminine side of Mars and connected to Scorpio. Because Mars rules Scorpio and Aries. Aries is the masculine side of Mars. Scorpio is the feminine side, and that's why it has to do with self-transformation, because Mars is a problem solver. Mars fixes problems. And when you see problems within yourself, you repair those things. And that's why it's connected to self-improvement and getting rid of bad habits and having the will to overcome self-sabotaging behaviors. So you're going to reset a cycle with those things as after June 17th, between June 17th and August 8th. So really important transit here, in addition to the fact that you have Ketu there. And Ketu is a planet that wants perfection. It's a planet that wants things in absolutes. It's also the planet of moksha or enlightenment, total freedom. So you can be a little self-critical during this time as Ketu moves through the first. But when Mars gets there, that's when you begin to take action. You really begin to take action and improve yourself and see a strategy you want to employ to improve your life in general and tackle any other problems that may be happening in your life. Now, another thing, you may start a new cycle or a new beginning around the relationship with your siblings, because Mars is siblings and Mars happens to rule your third house of siblings. Of course, I'm using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac here, okay? Mars will also rule your eighth house. So it's major changes, how you deal with a crisis, how you deal with just general irritations or problems. You can also start a new regimen around martial arts or fitness or sports or things that cause or require physical exertion. You can start a new cycle around real estate, your home, how you want your home to be, your environment, how it looks, any repairs in the home. But because a Virgo is very connected, Mars rules those houses of changes. All right. So it's more how you deal with major changes in your life as Mars goes through your first house. So it's a pretty important transit. It happens around every 2 years or so. So it'll set you up for the next 2 years of how you implement your will, how you tackle problems, how you go about your self-improvement, and how you deal with siblings and competitors, or even people who can be working against you, okay, jealous people, things like that. Because Mars is that problem solver. All right. Mars is also passion and energy and hunger for something. It's the fire element. It gives hunger. So when it's in the first house, it can make you hungry, physically hungry. And it also gives you a lot of passion and enthusiasm around improving your health, especially the health that shows up on your appearance. So your vitality. That's the first house. The first and sixth house are both houses of health, but the first house has to do more with how comfortable you are in your own skin, or is there something in your body that's causing pain? And if there is, you find a way to get rid of it. You find a way to cure it when Mars goes through that first house. So for a Libra rising, Mars will enter your 12th house on June 17th and be there until August 6th. So when a planet moves through the 12th house, it's pretty important. It is a very important transit, believe it or not, because it is ending the cycle. It's the ending of a cycle with that planet. And sometimes you get a last wish fulfilled around that planet. So with Mars, it can be a last wish fulfilled around your home or your residence or any real estate you own. or any investments in mining or things that come from the earth, like precious gems or minerals or stones, okay? If you're investing in things that come from the earth, like natural gas or oil, that's all within the realm of Mars. But Mars is a really big real estate planet, or the residence. It's the planet of your residence. So you can have a last wish fulfilled around those things, and then you're able to let it go out of your consciousness because it has been fulfilled. It also can have to do with a last wish around your siblings, or the relationship with your siblings, neighbors, coworkers, or teammates. Also something around anything martial, like playing sports or fitness or some type of martial art you want to learn. You can do those things as Mars transits through the 12th. It's the culmination or the finishing up, the last product of this cycle of Mars. Okay, the outcome of this previous 2-year cycle of Mars. That's roughly about how long it takes Mars to go through the zodiac. And the 12th house is the outcome of that cycle. And it's like that for every planet moving through the 12th house. You get the essence of what you've learned from that planet as it has moved through your houses. And so when it's in the 12th house, you get the essence of that planet and what you learned that you don't like about that planet, like anger and frustration, and how you react to things and how you get frustrated if your will is being thwarted. That is also an indication of Mars going through the 12th. You can give in charity. Maybe you need to give your time and energy to one of your siblings, or charity in some way. It doesn't have to be monetary, but it can be, okay? And also Mars is self-improvement. It's a big planet of self-improvement. That's the feminine side of Mars. That's the Scorpio side of Mars, of self-transformation. So you take in the last essence of that aspect of life, all right, as Mars moves through this 12th house for you. There can be expenses around real estate or the residence. There can be expenses around electrical appliances. There can be expenses around your siblings or neighbors or coworkers, because of the 12th house does cause expenses as well. And when a planet goes through the 12th, we can only access it in a different state, or in a different state of consciousness, a more relaxed state of consciousness. And that's really difficult for Mars, because Mars, you have to be very alert, you have to be very present, you have to be totally in your body. So it's hard to access the complete meaning of Mars, or your will. It's like as if your will is in a different zone sometimes, and it's hard to access that will, because you are whittling down, or you are distilling the essence of exactly how you want to implement your will. And then after August 6th, when Mars moves into your first house, that's when you develop a new cycle of implementing your will. So the 12th house is all about finishing up, distilling the essence of what you learned around the Mars indications, having some expenses around those things, but also getting your last wish around those things. Hello, Scorpio risings. Okay, so you're having Mars go into your 11th house of Virgo on June 17th through August 6th. And this is a big deal because Scorpio is ruled by Mars. Scorpio is the feminine side of Mars. Aries is the masculine side of Mars. Those two signs are in your solar plexus chakra. And so Mars going into the 11th house, you'll be very focused on 11th house issues because it's your ascendant lord or chart ruler. And so whenever Mars goes somewhere, wherever Mars is, we have a lot of passion, we have a lot of enthusiasm, we have a hunger for something. And you're going to have a hunger to socialize, to be with your friends, to expand your social network. You already have a pretty big focus there anyway, because you have Ketu there, the south node of the moon. And when that happens, situations are being resolved in that area of your life that have to do with your friends and your social circle, that have to do with your social network. And that includes social networks on social media, any groups you belong to. If you belong to any type of group, if you go to group therapy even, that is considered to be the 11th house. The people in those groups are 11th house people. So that will be a focus. Now, if you don't really socialize that much, or not a social person, you have a limited amount of friends, the 11th house is also where we have long-term goals. And Mars likes to fix problems. Mars is the planet we get out when we want to fix some problems, when we want to repair something, or where we want to do self-improvement. Now, Mars can also cause problems or that need to be solved around your social circle, around people in your groups. There may be people there who antagonize you or are jealous of you and maybe get aggressive with you. There can be some frustration around those things. But because you have this Mars Ketu conjunction in your 11th house, you want to solve any of those problems logically and not lose your head or get frustrated and blow up. And like I was saying in the beginning of the video, Ketu, or the south node of the moon, controls Mars. It puts a harness on Mars, all right? Sometimes there can be some frustration, but for the usually you really want to control Mars when Mars is with Ketu. And you'll be displaying self-control in the situations with your friends and amongst your peers and colleagues. This will also make you hungry to get respect and recognition, or admiration and appreciation from your peers and colleagues for a job well done in your career, or just for what you do every day, because the 10th house, the career house, is the house of karma, or the house of actions, and the 11th house is the gain of those things. So when we get a raise, when we get a promotion, that's the 11th house. That's the gain from doing a good job or performing good actions. So you're going to have a big focus and really be hungry and want to do self-improvement in those areas of being appreciated for a job well done. You'll also go after and strategize around how you want to meet your long-term goals and you'll fulfill your long-term desires. The 11th house is a very long-term house. It's where we make major sacrifices to get a desire that we want over a very long period of time. It's like, going to college for a degree in something where you sacrifice 4 years of your life for not working and taking out student loans to get a degree. That is a sacrifice. That's the 11th house goal. You can either start something new in that area of your life, or you can resolve an area or something that you've been working towards, some goal you've been working towards, or some desire that you want to fulfill. Overall, though, a major focus on that 11th house because of the rulership of Mars for a Scorpio rising. Hello, Sagittarius risings. All right, so for this Mars transit, Mars will be in your 10th house from June 17th to August 6th. And this is a big deal because Mars does really well in the 10th house. The 10th house is where Mars gets its directional strength, where it gets its power, because it's high in the sky and it can see what it needs to see. Mars is the general in the planetary army and needs to see the outlay of the land. So being in the 10th house is a very powerful position for Mars. Mars is the fire element, where you get a hunger, where you have enthusiasm and passion to go after something and to build and reach heights in your career. Self-improvement in the career, overcoming obstacles in your career. This is all really a big focus for you after June 17th, or between June 17th and August 6th. So you're hungry to move forward in your career. You build your power and influence through solving problems. Mars is the planet of solving problems and of improvement upon things. Mars is a strategist. You will strategize how to move forward in your career, or if you don't have a career, just to perform good actions. Because the 10th house has to do with the actions that we perform every day, and what we are known for. It's our reputation. So you will grow in your reputation in a beneficial way. This is already a focus for a Sagittarius because Ketu is there. Ketu, or the south node of the moon, is resolving issues, finishing up karmic debts in the house of career. But that also makes you highly focused and want to perfect your career, maybe be a little too critical of your career and try to control it too much. All right. So lots of focus, but try not to be too controlling or critical of where your career is going, because you can get really down on yourself. That's why Ketu, or the south node, is considered to be a malefic. It's important to develop your emotional happiness, contentment, and security in the opposite house of Pisces, because that's where Rahu is, where the north node is. But Mars being in your 10th house will help you to move forward in your career. If you are not, if you don't have a job or you're looking for a job, it's very possible that you could acquire a job during this transit of Mars going through your 10th house. So between June 17th and August 6th. This will also build upon your power and influence. Okay, your worldly power and influence, your worldly responsibilities, and how you take care of those. And for most people, that is a career. But Mars being there, you have a passion, you have a hunger to have more power and influence in your world, basically. This can also cause some changes in your career because the rulership of your 5th house, Aries, by Mars, in your 12th house of Scorpio by Mars, brings the element of those houses, or the indications of those houses, into the 10th house. And the 5th house has to do with change in career in some way. It doesn't necessarily mean that you change careers or you get another job. It can mean just something within your career changes and you have to overcome a problem of learning something new or something like that. Okay, so for Capricorn rising, you will have Mars move into your 9th house using whole sign houses system. I'm also using the tropical zodiac. Mars will move into your 9th house of Virgo on June 17th and remain there until August 6th. So this is an important transit wherever Mars is. Mars is slower moving. It's not as slow as Jupiter or Saturn, of course, but it will stay there for a while. And Mars is the fire element. So wherever it is in the chart transiting, we have an intense hunger, we have a passion, we want to strategize, we want to go for what we want. So being in Virgo in the 9th house, this is also where Ketu is, your south node of the moon. You've got a conjunction of Mars and Ketu there. There will be a major focus. You want to perfect that area of life. You want to perfect your religious or spiritual path and how you relate to that path, how you relate to your teachers, or find your teachers, or implement the teachings of people who inspire you, which is the 9th house. It's also, you want to go after what you truly want. It's really important in that regard because the 9th house is our inspiration. And there is nothing more important than following our true dharma, which is inspired action. That's why the 9th house is the most beneficial house. It is the ultimate of luck, grace, fortune, okay? It's a trinal house. It is the most powerful of the trinal houses. So this is a very lucky house. You're going to get lucky with things. You're going to get lucky with things around Mars. Mars, of course, is real estate. It's your residence. It's where you live, you know, buildings and land. It is things that come from the earth, like gems and jewelry and natural gas, oil, mining, all of those things. You'll get lucky with these things. These things can provide fortune. You can get fortune from your siblings, from your neighbors, from your teammates, if you're on any teams, from your coworkers. You get lucky and fortunate with these types of people. You're lucky and fortunate with competition, with fitness or martial arts. You can also go on a quest or strategize how you're going to implement your philosophical platform or your spiritual path into your life and you're going to commit to it. There can also be a problem around these people that you want to fix, that you want to overcome with your teachers and mentors, or with something in your belief system or your spiritual path, because Mars is the planet we take out and use when it's time to fix a problem. So there can be problems, there can be disagreements with these people, but you overcome them. You overcome them through logic. Mars rules logic. We use logic to solve problems. When you can't use your logic, you want to break the problem. That's when you get frustrated, and that's when the anger and the animosity emerges, right? So that's what Mars is known for when Mars is frustrated, all right? When logic does not work. And this is also a house of traveling within a different country to learn about the culture, to take a pilgrimage, to enjoy yourself. So you can have a strong passion to do that when Mars goes through your 9th house. But overall, that's where you're going to get a lot of your happiness, okay, through 9th house issues, because Mars actually rules the 4th house of happiness and contentment and emotional security for a Capricorn rising. Okay, so for an Aquarius rising, Mars moves into your 8th house on June 17th and will remain there until August 6th. I'm using whole sign houses in the tropical zodiac. Mars going into the 8th house. Now, Mars is a planet that breaks things. And you also have Ketu in your 8th house, and Ketu has to do with resolving issues, finishing up things. So when Mars goes into your 8th house, certain relationships can break, especially with your siblings. Something can come to the surface. There can be some frustrations, animosity, resentments that emerge that you need to let it out, all right? Or it comes out in some way. And especially with one of your siblings, it can also be with a neighbor or a coworker or a teammate. Something can happen in their life that puts them in crisis, and you can be there to solve the problem. That's another way it can manifest, because Mars is a planet of solving problems. We take out our Mars whenever there's a big problem to be solved, or where we want to have self-improvement, or we want to improve upon something and make it better. That's all Mars. And Mars rules the 3rd house of siblings, coworkers, neighbors. For an Aquarius rising, it rules Aries. This can also cause some major changes in your career or with your boss. There can be frustrations with the boss, all right, because of the rulership of that 10th house. For an Aquarius rising, Mars rules the 10th house of Scorpio. You can also have some crisis or some problems around the boss, like I said, those people, the siblings and the coworkers, or something in their life can cause a crisis. There can be some issues in the home that need to be addressed, all right? Physical issues with the building itself or electrical issues, okay? Because Mars rules those things, and the 8th house tends to cause something unexpected, something you're not prepared for around martial type of things. Something really interesting about Mars is that it is the planet of self-improvement, and Mars rules Scorpio, which is the sign of self-transformation. It is the feminine side of Mars. The 8th house is a house of taking the deep dive within the psyche, of psychotherapy, any type of healing process that heals the deep traumas or the self-sabotaging behaviors. So when Mars goes into the 8th house, you really have a strong drive to transform yourself, for self-improvement in the area of your emotional security, your emotional state, and how secure you feel as an individual with all of your past amongst other individuals, how you are esteemed by other people, which is the 8th house. So you can really be focusing on that deep psychological journey, and also the mystery of life, any mysteries. You want to figure out a mystery. There might be a big mystery that you really want to solve. because Mars does the big things. Mars solves the big problems. And the 8th house is mysteries. It's especially the mystery of yourself. It is the second moksha house, or the house of enlightenment, the second house on that moksha trine or the enlightenment trine of 4, 8, and 12. So it has to do a lot with self-realization and understanding how we self-sabotage in our motivations. We move beyond that. We move beyond self-reflection in the 8th house and move to real magic, or seeing the divine in nature. Okay, seeing the divine in whatever path that is, and being able to read the omens of the divine, which is the 8th house. The 8th house rules astrology and tarot and any type of occult practice, quote unquote. So when Mars is there, there may be a problem with those things that you need to overcome, that you need to improve upon. Or there is some break with one of these types of people, or there is a real need, a real desire to move forward in that area. Okay, Pisces rising. So Mars moves into your 7th house of Virgo on June 17th and will be there until August 6th. And so Mars is a pretty good planet for a Pisces rising. It's what they call a functional benefic, because it rules your 9th house, and it does give it that status. Okay, so it isn't detrimental in that way, but Mars moving into the 7th house is going to, if you are in a relationship or married, it can cause problems to the partner's health in ways where they break something, or something painful flares up, or they have inflammation. A lot of that can be around the muscular system, the nervous system, or the bones. That can happen when Mars goes into the 7th, and Ketu is also there for a Pisces rising, or the south node of the moon, and that's going to give the effects of Mars. So your partner, if you're in a relationship, could have some surgery during this time, or have something reset, or something burnt off or cut away, because that's what Mars and Ketu do, both of them. Ketu gives the effects of Mars. Also, this can cause some frustrations in the relationship, or some problems that need to be overcome with the partner, or in the way that you relate to the partner in the relationship in general. Because Mars rules the 9th house, it doesn't make these problems overwhelming. It will not break the relationship unless there are many other factors pointing to that in your natal chart. But just by itself, Mars going through the 7th house can have you solve logic and be a little more aggressive with your partner, or assertive with them, or vice versa. Or that person can be frustrated because of some health issues. And then it gives you a lot of passion and enthusiasm to make the relationship closer, or be with a partner, because Mars causes hunger. Mars rules the fire element, and the fire element makes us hungry. And that's why Mars rules passion, enthusiasm, a strong drive and will to go after what we want. And Mars is that planet we use to strategize. So if you are a business owner or an entrepreneur, you're a Pisces rising, you can really strategize with your business. You go after the business, you go after the public, because the 7th house is the public, and business owners usually need to have a good relationship with the public, or build their relationship with the public, which is also ruled by the 7th house. So you have this strong drive to make it work. You can be slightly disappointed in these things because of the presence of Ketu. And Ketu wants things in absolutes. Ketu wants things to be perfect. Ketu wants to control everything. Just remember, you can't do that. You can't try to control too much. Everything isn't perfect. And when you start feeling that way, come back into yourself and say, what do I want? How am I going to express myself, rather than how do I perfect what I think that the public wants? Because you have Rahu currently going through your 1st house, which is you, yourself, your own self-confidence, and building your individuality, and becoming more of who you are. Okay, but Mars does give a certain amount of passion and energy, and it goes through the seventh house once around every 2 years, roughly. All right, so it's important to take advantage of that energy to pursue what you want. If you are doing business, you don't even have to be a business owner. You can be just doing a business deal. All right, but the partnership or the relationship is going to be important during this time. It definitely is going to be. So just to try to remember to solve any problems that may arise or disagreements or arguments, try to solve those things with logic. Remember, Mars is a good planet for Pisces. It rules the ninth house, so it can use logic very well. And let's see what else. Okay, so if you want to travel to a foreign country, that is also the seventh house, or residence in the foreign country, then you'll have a lot of power behind you to do that. You want to strategize how you do that. And that also is a focus, dealing with foreigners or going to a foreign country, as Mars can move through the seventh house. The seventh house is a travel house or residence in foreign countries. And for a Pisces rising, Mars rules the ninth house of travel too. So that can also be a focus as Mars moves through this July. Basically, it's June 17th through August 6th.